Hey, folks, welcome to the program. This is just the pre-show, of course, as we are getting set up and making sure everything's running smoothly. Looks as though my mics are up, ported up. My sound is good. My stream is ready to fly, and I think we're about ready to go. So it's already working. How about that? We determined that in the first 12 seconds of the program. So we've got about 2.5 minutes before we go live over on the radio network. That's over at OdysseyRadio.com. Odyssey spelled oddly, ODYSY1.com. Oh, wait, there's no one. ODYSY radio.com. And so thank you, Matthew Sainsbury. It's good to be seen. Good to see you as well. And Susie Q, good to see you. Steve Clark, good to see you, brother. And who else we got? I saw somebody else, I thought, earlier on. I thought I saw Roger Rabbit, but that might have been before. It all changes once we go live. All the old comments drop off if they're there before we go live. So good to see you all. And more people streaming in. Pearson Castile just came in. Good to see you. Hello, y'all, he says. We got a minute and a half left before we go live over on the radio. So that's all I got. I just went up and said goodnight to everybody. My wife is still up there doing stuff. She'll sneak down and probably go to bed during the show. So maybe I'll be able to see her after the show. Hey, Michael, Viking Off-Roading, good to see you. Randall Flagg, good to see you as well. Welcome to the program. 1 minute left before we go live over on Odyssey Radio. That's ODYSY radio.com if you just want to listen to the audio version of this show over on the radio station. So, Rainey and I have been working on our floors upstairs. Oh, you can't really see this. That's too bad. It's on my phone. Oh, and I'm in miniature. But there's a picture I took of the floor. It's just about done. We're just starting to haul stuff and put it back into place. Nothing's organized up there yet. Still got some trim to finish out upstairs. And the hallway. And then we're done up there. We're going to go dark. We got about 9 seconds. So everybody, we'll be right back. Sit tight.
The Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent talk.
Happy Monday evening, one and all. It is me, Scotty Roberts. This is my show. I am the host of the Intrepid radio program right here on Odyssey Radio. You can find, well, it's actually Subspace Odyssey Radio, but the website is odysseyradio.com. You can go to ODYSYradio.com to hear this show in its audio format. You can hear all the archives of this show from the time we started over there at Odyssey Radio, plus a plethora of other great shows and hosts that you can listen to. And of course, if you're listening via just radio, you can come over to my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Scotty Roberts. And you can hear this show and watch this show. And the best part, over there at the YouTube channel, you can join the chat room. Infiltrated, inhabited, indwelt, overrun by Intrepids. And you can have some great conversation over there. And so everybody that's over there right now, welcome. Steve Clark is there. Susie Q, Josh Kemp, Anita Palmer is there. Sarah Youssef is there. Matthew Sainsbury, all the way from Barbados. We call him Captain Barbados. Randall Flagg is there. Pearson Castile. Viking Off-Roading, Michael. Dr. Michael. And who else we got? I think I named a couple of you probably a couple of times, but people are filtering in. So welcome to the program. And remember, right after this show is over on Odyssey Radio, we stick around, at least if you're over on the YouTube channel, because we're going to go. Oh, my Bluetooth is talking to me. That's weird. Look at this. I don't know what it's picking up. It just told me it connected, but there's my Bluetooth. Remember? Oh, there it is. Yep. Thank you, Russ Haslage, the owner of the radio station, gave me that. But that's connected to my Bluetooth. I can take my calls and stuff on that communicator. So, yeah, you can come over and you can watch the show. You can join the chat room. You can yada, 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 and yada, yada. You can also go over to my Patreon site. That's patreon.com/Scotty Roberts. And you can, I guess there's no better way to say it than donate. You can contribute to this show. Help us grow this show. We can do fun, amazing, exciting things as we grow. You can also join on my YouTube channel. You become a member, and you can also join and help financially support this show. So thank you, all you listeners out there. You are welcome to come in and join the show. If you can't, at least spread the word and get the word out there. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Michelle Kenham Freedom has just entered the room. Much love to everyone. She says much love to me, even. So it's nice to have you here. And I'm doing my best without putting my glasses on and off. I don't like to have them on all the time. I have to have them on to read my chat room if I'm on a good day or on a bad day. So had some, if you weren't here on Sunday, I skipped out on Friday night for the show. Had a good time out with friends. Rainey and I went out with some old friends of mine, Carr and Marion, and we had a great time. And it's always nice. If you're a parent, you know what this is. I know, Michelle, you're a parent. I know others of you are parents, currently parents. And sometimes it's just nice to get away and have adult beverage combined with adult conversation. And that's what we did Friday. So it was a good time out. I have that ability to just say, tonight I'm going to be gone. And so we're not going to do a show, but whenever I don't do a show, you can go to the radio station and you can listen to a rebroadcast over there, or you can go over onto my YouTube channel and pick any one of over 1,000 episodes that we have up over on YouTube of this show, the Intrepid radio program. So libations, says Michelle Cannon-Free. Yes. And so it was a nice time. It kind of felt like old times. You know, when you have kids and you get in a positive way because you love your children, but life gets bogged down sometimes. Everything is obligation. Everything is doing. You have to do for the kids. You have to work to keep the roof over your head, work to keep electricity going, work for food, work for everything to make sure your family not only survives, but succeeds. And we do the same thing here. And then Rainey's got Scouts. She did that for the kids, and she's part of Scouts. We've all got our stuff that we do, our extra things. I've got the show. We've got all this other stuff going on. And you know what? You sometimes just forget to take time for yourselves. Rainey and I will get a chance to, you know what our dating life looks like? Go into the store together. Hey, we got to go get groceries. Let's go together. While the kids are in school. And now, of course, she's taken a little side job over at the dollar store, the thrifty dollar store over here, and which is nice. It's about 2 minutes from here. And so she can go over there, and she's gone in the mornings, roughly the mornings, and a little bit after lunch, and then she's home. So it's kind of nice. But it was nice to get out. That was my whole point with that. When you got kids, when you got a family, when you got other things, other obligations, sometimes life overruns you and you miss out on those things. So it was good to do that on Friday. That's why I took the night off last Friday. So I want to, because I can't play my ads without getting a copyright violation because of the music in the background, and I haven't had time to recut it. Just want you to know I'm an illustrator. Those of you who don't know, I've been an illustrator for 40 years, an art director for 40 years, a designer for 40 years. It's what I do for a living. You can go check out my website. Real simple. I'll put in a link. Oh, you know what? It's in the scroll bar here. I'm not even going to put up the link. I'll just put up the scroll bar. So you can go to scottallenroberts.com and you can take a look at my work over there. And if you need anything, you know of anybody, I illustrate books, I design logos, and I've been doing that for my entire life. So you can go over there and take a look, see what you think. And if you need anything or you know of somebody that needs something, there it is. It's the best place to go. That's all I can say about that. And I think I've got all my personal junk out of the way. I want to jump into this. We all are pretty much aware that Israel is a nation that we support in the United States. They're an ally of ours. We also know that they are in the Middle East. And for many people, that's about the extent of their knowledge. Why does Israel exist? If you've gone to church at all or synagogue, you would know that Israel has existed for thousands of years in one form or another. And so you might not know all the ins and outs and all the details about Israel. I'm going to cover those in a few minutes tonight. And we're going to talk about some of this conflict. All I know is that right now, the whole thing that's happening now started just a few days ago and Israel is at war, official declared war with Hamas after the unprecedented attacks. And the Israeli army is going to go on the offensive against Hamas with a force like never before, quote unquote, so said Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. And he vowed that on Monday, more than 48 hours after a devastating and surprising attack that has left at least 900 people dead in Israel. Israel used to be, or always has been, one of the safest places to travel in the Middle East because they have such an amazing defense system. And they're a very strong nation for as tiny as they are. But now there was a surprise attack that took out 900 civilians in Israel. Who did this? Hamas. Who is Hamas, you ask? We'll talk about that a little bit tonight. But in response, Israel has pounded the Hamas enclave with airstrikes. More than 680 Palestinians have been killed, according to Gaza's health ministry. Hamas has said civil hostages would be executed, and the killings broadcast on television and radio and internet if Israel targets people in Gaza without warning. And the group claims to be holding more than 100 hostages, including Israeli army officers. And that's when I first saw anything about this at all. I saw a little video clip of a woman being abducted out of her car by a bunch of guys in black T-shirts. And this was Hamas kidnapping Israelis and taking them over into Gaza. And Hamas is what would you call them? You can almost say paramilitary group. They are a terrorist group of Palestinians that has been, I'll go into a little more detail. I'm just giving you the quickie on them. They commit terrorist acts against Israel. One of the charters of Hamas in their charter in their inception was the annihilation, and I'm quoting, the annihilation of Jews in Israel and worldwide, end quote. That is in their charter, Hamas. Now, U.S. President Joe Biden said that at least 11 Americans were killed in the Hamas attacks, and others are likely to be held as hostages, we think. And some of the headlines coming out in this right now in the current conflict, and some of these I just looked at. This is just 28 minutes ago. This was updated. A Canadian who died during the Hamas attack acted as a shield, survivors tell parents. Alexander Look was enjoying the outdoor music festival. They attacked, Hamas bombed with missiles a music festival. It was near the Gaza border on Saturday when Hamas militants began killing scores of people. They went out there with machine guns and just started mowing them down. Attendees, like we hear here in the United States, when domestic terrorists will kill people at festivals or schools or something like that. Now, Look's parents told CNN that they were on the phone with the 33-year-old as he tried to escape the gunfire. Look and other festival goers sought shelter in a bunker without a door, his parents said. And then I heard him tell his friends, they're coming back. There's a lot of them. And then all I heard was a lot of gunshots, lots of rounds. Then we heard nothing. And the CBC reported that one woman who survived the attack messaged the parents to say she saw the son's body, and another said he prevented others from being killed. He was our shield. I swear to you, he was our shield. If it wasn't for him, all 30 of us in there would be dead. A woman in the video, which was reviewed by CBC, told the parents. Like a true warrior, said someone else, he left as a hero, wanting to protect the people he was with. Alex was a force of nature, endowed with a unique charisma and unparalleled generosity. That's what his father, Alain Haim, Look, said. And the world will never be the same without you. Goodbye, my son. I love you and watch over us from above. All of these things, this happened at a music festival. This is when this all broke out. Palestinian Americans stuck in Gaza, feel trapped and abandoned by the U.S. Embassy. Palestinian Americans. More of the headlines. U.S. top generals. I skipped something. U.S. top general speaks to Israeli counterpart for the first time in discussions to bolster regional deterrence. Another headline from an hour and a half ago. Human Rights Watch criticizes both Israel and Palestinians for unlawful violations. I tend to have a problem with Human Rights Watch because they're trying to lump the two sides together. One thing I noticed a few years ago when all the bombing was going on, Rocky Stucci, John Ward, and I doing the Situation Room, we're talking about this, is that with the thousands of bombs that had been lobbed into Israel by Hamas indiscriminately and without warning, Israel only bombed back after they gave fair warning. We're going to bomb this neighborhood, this building, clear out your citizens. Of course, it gave them time to clear out the reason they were being bombed anyway. Hidden material, missile material, things like that, weapons caches, and so on. There is a difference between Israel and the Palestinians. The first thing that comes up, and I know a lot of people ask these questions, are what the hell is at the core of all this? Why are they always fighting? Why are they always at each other's throats? Why do they want mutual destruction? But what I'm finding is that Israel isn't seeking the mutual or the destruction of Hamas. They're trying to find diplomatic answers. They're trying to find the way to have the two. And by the way, Palestine, if you didn't know this, Palestine is not a country. It's a region. It doesn't have a central government. Palestine is not a nation. Israel is. And I've got some material here where I'm going to go through and give you a little bit of a history of how all this has happened that brings us into the current day. But remember, when Rome, going back 2,000 years, when Rome sacked Jerusalem, and they tore down the temple of Herod, and they utterly destroyed, conquering Israel. That was in 70 AD. They wiped it all out. They carried off some people captive. Others they left there. It was no longer a functioning government or a functioning nation. It was dead. And Rome renamed the whole region Palestine. And that's where that came from. There was no Palestinian government. There were no Palestinian citizens. There were people who lived in Palestine. And that is how that worked. Sainsbury says, in Vespasian, yeah. That all, you can go back and dig into history and you can get a lot of this information. But if we start looking at this, I have several things up here I want to bring up and show you. I've got a history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. There's a chronology here that I've got, but this goes more to back to the beginnings of the early 20th century, World War I and pre-World War I. But it goes back even further than that. Let's see. I've got this one up that talks about the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And this one recaps something I just talked about for a little bit here. Let's see if this is it. Yes. I got to put on my glasses for this. But the history of this conflict, the history of the Jewish people and their roots in the land of Israel spans 35 centuries, 3,500 years. And it's here that the culture and the religious identity of the Jewish people was formed in what is now Israel. And their history and their presence in this land has been continuous and unbroken throughout the centuries, even after the majority of the Jews were forced into exile almost 2,000 years ago after the Roman conquest. With the establishment of the State of Israel on May 14th of 1948, Jewish independence was renewed. Now, the early history, before I go into this, I want to show you a little video. And this may give me a little copyright claim made against me, even though I didn't pull it from YouTube. But I want you to see this. Now, everybody pay attention to your screens if you're watching. And if you remember the book, I've talked about the book Exodus by Leon Uris, the story of the reestablishment of the State of Israel after World War II. And a great novel, by the way. A movie was made of that in the, I want to say it was the late 50s, but I believe it was the early 60s. Paul Newman playing the main character and other actors you'd recognize. About the establishment of the State of Israel in the late 1940s. And there was music that you'd recognize. You've probably heard the theme, not even knowing what it was. The theme music from Exodus, a powerful piece of music. Now, this is, believe it or not, if you've heard that, there were lyrics that were written for that way back in the day when the movie was made. And so this little video I'm going to show you, it's 3.5 minutes long. It's got the song that was written. You'll recognize the tune. This was the theme music for the movie Exodus. But watch this video now and pay attention to this. Let me pull it up for you here. Here we go. It's going to start almost immediately when I click on it. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Right here. Here we go, folks.
This land is mine. God gave this land to me. This brave and ancient land to me. And when the morning sun reveals her hills and plains, then I see a land where children can run free. So take my hand and walk this land with me and walk this lovely land with me. Though I'm just a man, when you are by my side, with the help of God, I know I can be strong. Just a man, when you are by my side, with the help of God, I know I can be strong to make this land our home. If I must fight, I'll fight to make this land our own until I die. This land is
So that gives you a little graphic representation of what the conflict over the land of Israel has been, even since before it was Israel. The artist said that each one of those stages that you see in that video, each one of those soldiers, those militants, represent real armies, real countries that have fought over Israel over thousands of years. So I thought that would be worth showing as we get into talking a little bit about where this all started, where it came from, why it's here. I'm going to go back into some of this information that I have up here, but for the 2 millennia that has passed, the 2,000 years that have passed after the Roman conquest, no other state or unique groups developed in the region that they renamed Palestine. So get that clear. There was no government. There was no centralized government. There was no civil capacity. There were just people who lived in a region named Palestine. And instead, though, different empires and people came, they colonized the place, they ruled, and they disappeared. Jews remained in Palestine during all of these changes. Throughout these 2,000 years, Jews, regardless of their current country of residence, continued to view a return to their ancient homeland as an essential part of their identity and a source of hope. There was a saying at the Seder meals. And remember, I come from a family I don't have any Jewish heritage. My mother's stepfather was Jewish, and he married my grandmother when my mom was about 4 or 5 years old and was always our grandfather. His whole side of the family is Jewish. And so I saw some things up close and personal. I learned some things. I learned a little bit of Yiddish when I was there, and when I saw some of those, and we've talked about that before. But one thing at the Seder meal, they would always, and this is a tradition in other religions as well, but they would leave a place setting at the meal that was where nobody was sitting. They'd leave a chair and a plate and a cup and whatever. And it was for the coming Messiah. And one of the toasts, I guess it would be, or the sayings at the Seder meal was, next year in Jerusalem. Meaning that the Jews were always looking forward to their identity being reestablished once they were able to return to their ancient homeland. That was an essential part of their identity as a people. And between 1517 and 1917, that 400-year period, Palestine was part of the Ottoman Empire. And the region initially prospered under the Ottomans, but during the empire's decline, it was reduced to a sparsely populated, impoverished, barren sand pit of an area. Meanwhile, the Zionist movement began and was emerging in Europe in the late 19th century, generated by an increasing anti-Semitism and violence against the Jews in Europe, as well as the rising nationalism throughout the continent. Zionists, what was Zionism? Remember, Mount Zion was the place where Abraham was supposed to have sacrificed his son Isaac. Mount Zion, Jerusalem, Israel, the heart and the core of it all. And so the Zionists were the ones that wanted to reestablish the homeland. Their goal was the return of the Jewish people to a sovereign state in the land of Israel. And this fostered increased Jewish immigration to Palestine, and it sought international political recognition of the Jewish right to independence in Palestine. Now remember, there was no formal government there in Palestine, and so they would just move in and they would start buying land from the landowners around there. They would start the kibbutzes, which was the communal farms, to start to reclaim the land from the desert. They irrigated, they planted a lot of these original kibbutzes, or the big farms, and the re-greening of Israel, if you will. And when the Ottoman Empire was defeated in World War I, which went from 1914 to 1918, its lands were ceded to the victorious Allies, who carved the land into new nations, which included Iraq, Lebanon, and Syria. And then came the British Mandate. Now, under the Treaty of Sevres in 1920, the League of Nations, that's pre-UN, formally gave control of Palestine, the region, to the British government. And Britain's job was to implement the Balfour Declaration, which had been signed 5 years earlier, stating Britain's desire to create a homeland in Palestine for the Jews. That was their intent. Create a homeland for the Jews inside the region of Palestine, because this included their historical homeland in what was once Israel. So even before this declaration, the Balfour Declaration, Jews had begun to purchase land and settle in the country, and as they continued to do so, the Jewish population grew to some 600,000 on the eve of World War II. And of course, when the modern return of the Jews to the land of Israel began, Arabs were living there. Not in a nation, just in the region. They lived there. They lived in the ruins and some of the cities that had been built up, but no government there. So toward the end of the 19th century, and more so in the early 20th century, the national consciousness of these Arabs emerged as Palestinian nationalism. And that nationalism aspired to independence itself. Thus, the Arab desire for independence clashed with the Jewish desire for return to the land. And so British control over this territory lasted from 1923 to 1948, and during which time the authorities were challenged by the demands of the Zionists for Jewish self-government. The Zionists were saying, we want a home We want home rule. We want a nation. We want to establish a state. We want to reestablish the state of Israel. And they were pushing for that. They were demanding it. And there was a growing Arab nationalist movement that rejected the Jewish presence and the nationalist aspirations. So growing Jewish Arab violence and attacks on British personnel by some Jewish extremists led Britain to announce that it sought to end its mandate in the area. We're just going to pull out, they said. We're going to pull out and leave it up to them. So during this period, there was also the 1939 White Paper that stated that Palestine would be neither a Jewish state nor an Arab state, but an independent state to be established within 10 years of that date by 1949, they said. And the White Paper also limited Jewish immigration to Palestine to 75,000 for the first 5 years. Can't have any more than 75,000 Jews here for the first 10 years. And the White Paper limited the first 5 years, I'm sorry. And it was subject to the country's ability to absorb them economically and would later be contingent on Arab consent. And so stringent restrictions were also placed on how much land Jews could acquire. And despite efforts to rescind the White Paper following the end of World War II, it remained in effect until the British departed Palestine and ended the British Mandate, their ownership of Palestine, in 1948. And then we come to the United Nations partitioning out the land. So following Britain's February 1947 announcement of its intention to terminate its mandate government, the UN General Assembly appointed a special committee, the United Nations Special Committee on Palestine, or UNSCOP, if you will, to make recommendations on the land's future government. And UNSCOP recommended the establishment of two separate states in Palestine, Jewish state and an Arab state, and to be joined by economic union within the Jerusalem-Bethlehem region as an enclave under international administration. And so on November 29th of 1947, the UN General Assembly voted on the partition plan, adopted by 33 votes to 13 with 10 abstentions. The Jewish side accepted the UN plan for the establishment of the two different states. So the Jews, who were coming back and wanted their homeland back, they agreed to the proposal that there should be two separate states, a Jewish state and an Arabic state, with a union that was economic. And so the Jewish side accepted the UN plan. The Arab states rejected the plan and almost immediately formed volunteer armies that infiltrated into Palestine against the Jews. Almost right away. And so the founding of the State of Israel took place the next year in 1948. Israel's establishment as an independent sovereign state was officially declared in Tel Aviv on Friday, May 14th, 1948, by Zionist leader David Ben-Gurion, who became actually the first prime minister of Israel. And the day the British mandate over Palestine was officially terminated in accordance with UN Resolution 181. The War of Independence took place almost immediately, 1948 to 1949. So Israel now becomes a state, a nation in 1948. And it's blended in the Jerusalem and Bethlehem area. That's why you still see in what would be the capital of Israel, Jerusalem is not the capital. Tel Aviv is up on the coast, the Mediterranean coast. But Jerusalem is a split city. It's shared by many, and by Jews and Arabs alike. And so the War of Independence, when the UN voted to partition the mandate on November 29th of 1947, Palestinian Arabs, with the help from Arab states, launched attacks against Israel to seize the entire mandate. They wanted the whole thing for themselves. They didn't want the Jews to have a state. And on May 14th of 1948, Israel declared independence, was immediately invaded by the armies of 5 Arab nations: Egypt, Syria, Transjordan, Lebanon, and Iraq. And they all attacked Israel at the same time. And the newly formed Israeli Defense Force, the IDF, which still exists today, managed to prevail over these 5 nations attacking them after 15 months of war. Then 20 years later, in 1967, came the 6-Day War. Israel was forced to defend itself when Syria, Egypt, Jordan, and Iraq again intensified their attacks, and Egypt illegally blocked Israel's access to international waters and expelled UN peacekeeping forces. 4 Arab countries mobilized more than 250,000 troops in preparation for a full-scale invasion. Israel preempted the invasion in a defensive war and managed to capture the West Bank from Jordan, Gaza and the Sinai Peninsula from Egypt, and the Golan Heights from Syria in the 6-Day War. Now, that leads us kind of to where Israel is today. Since 1948, Israel's population has grown tenfold. Israel was founded with a population of about 806,000 people. There are cities. Minneapolis is bigger than 806,000 people. Today, there are 8.5 to 9 million Israelis. About 75% of them are Jewish. Like other democratic, multi-ethnic countries, Israel struggles with various social and religious issues and economic problems. And it's a country of immigrants that often came to the country dispossessed. Many of the original settlers post-World War II came after the Nazi tyranny in Europe. And on the political front, most Arabs and Muslim states continue to deny the Jewish state's right to exist. Unfortunately, only 2 of the 22 Middle Eastern states have signed peace agreements with Israel. Egypt and Jordan have peace agreements with Israel. The ongoing Palestinian-Israeli conflict is utterly complex. It's got challenges related to borders, settlements, sovereignty, and other contentious issues. And there are those on both sides of the conflict who hope one day to achieve a peaceful coexistence. Now, mind you, you've got a lot of just average folk like you and me that are Arab and Jew that would love to see there be peace, lasting peace over there. But you also have, when you have groups like Hamas, which they have come out and admitted, Hamas, who made the attacks a few days ago, killing 900 in Israel and have kidnapped all number of people over there, over 100 people, some Americans. They have come right out and said, we are funded by Iran. Guess who we just, and this is a political question that you will have to look into and answer. I've got opinions on this. I don't have all my facts straight yet, but I do know this. Who is the nation that we just bartered a deal to release our 5 hostages in exchange for releasing $6 billion of frozen assets to Iran? Joe Biden just did that. The Biden administration. I can't say Biden did it. I don't think he knows what the hell he's doing from day to day. But his administration did it. $6 billion just in the last couple of weeks went to Iran. Then we find out Iran is funding Hamas. We also find out that the planning of Hamas's raid on Israel has been taking place for months. So you start putting all that together. I've got some numbers here. These are just overly general numbers, but I'm going to give you an idea here. I put in the question, how much money has the United States given Iran? And I specifically said between the Obama and Biden regimes. And what we're looking at here right now, there was Biden's $90 billion bailout to Tehran, alliances with Iran. This was as of April 28th of 2021. Alliances with Iran threaten to undo much of the progress made. And right away, the regime could receive a payday of around $90 billion. That was 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. The Biden administration recently gave the $6 billion to Iran. But what did they do by paying a terrorist organization, paying them $6 billion to release our hostages? What have they done? That's a policy that emboldens terrorists. What else has been given to Iran? We know at the end of 2020, Iran was down to just $4 billion in accessible foreign exchange reserves, thanks to the historic success of the Trump sanctions. Well, Biden undid all of that and unfroze $6 billion of that a couple of weeks ago. The U.S. sent a plane under Obama with $400 million in cash on a pallet, all strapped together to Iran. $400 million in cash. I'd like to have that pallet delivered to my back patio. Thank you very much. And in a pathetic attempt, this article says, to hide behind semantics, the Obama administration finally did acknowledge that $400 million was delayed as leverage. So, Team Biden made the worst deal ever with Iran by paying the $6 billion. And that money went to Iran with them having, there are no strings attached. We can't tell them how to use that money. They can use that money for whatever they want. Iran repeated that, said we can use this for whatever we want. Now, those that would like to poo-poo the accusations that the Biden administration is really behind these attacks in Israel, not behind them in perhaps in nature or in intent, but behind them by giving a terrorist regime that supports Hamas the money to do it. The Biden administration will say, well, no, we didn't give them money for that. We gave them money for other things. Well, for humanitarian aid. Well, what do you suppose Iran did? They simply used that money for humanitarian aid and took their own money that they would have used for humanitarian aid and funneled that into Hamas. I'm telling you, it's semantics, folks. What did Steve say? He said, too much money as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, absolutely. Professor Bauer says Israel knew it was coming and allowed it. And there's a big question there, Professor, is how could they have prevented it? I don't know. So what you've got right now, let me get back to what I was talking about here. That Israeli conflict is complex with the Arabs. The Arabs want to see them wiped out. As I've mentioned before in this show, and I mentioned in other times in recent days, is that Hamas, who has launched these attacks on Israel, has in its charter, look up Hamas's charter. It's online, at least it used to be. They have in its charter one of the, I want to say it was item number 8 in the charter, but I might be remembering that wrong. I did not re-look it up, doing this off the top of my head. But in their charter, it states that they are for the annihilation of all Jews in Israel and worldwide. Not just in Palestine. So this is what you're looking at. So right now, 43% of the world's Jews live in Palestine. In Israel, the state of Israel, which was once the region of Palestine, not the nation of Palestine. The population of Israel is about 9 million now. The population, 75% of them are Jews, 20% are Arabs, and about 4 to 5% are identified as non-Arab Christians, Baha'i and others. So those are some of the numbers that you have in Israel right now. What do we got? We got about 8 minutes left, so I got some time to dig into a couple of other things here. There is a chronology of this conflict between the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and I wanted to kind of go through this. This surprise coordinated assault on Israel by Palestinian militants beginning at an outdoor music festival the other day. One of the deadliest and most brazen attacks in years, brought this renewed attention to an old and continuing problem, and that is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that's vexed the Middle East for decades. And the death toll has risen to more than 1,000 people from this attack the other day by Hamas in Israel. At least 900 Israelis, according to Israeli media, and 680 Palestinians, according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. Dozens of Israeli soldiers, citizens, possibly foreign nationals, have been taken as captives, according to the Israel Defense Forces. They're now saying there's about 100 people missing. And the roots of the conflict and mistrust are deep, they're complex, they're predating the establishment even of the State of Israel in 1948. Both Palestinians and Israelis see the territory between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea as their own. This land is mine. God gave this land to me, as that little video said at the beginning. And we show all the hands that have continued over the millennia to fight over this piece of land. The past 7 decades have brought war, uprisings, times glimmers of hope for compromise. Even under Jimmy Carter, the Camp David Accords was one of them. Bill Clinton was very close. This is a timeline that begins around 1948. That includes the latest violence in the Gaza Strip. Well, let's go back even further. World War I, the question of Palestine. The Ottoman Empire controlled that part of the Middle East from the early 16th century until control of most of the region was granted to the British after World War I. What? Oh, say, you ruddy, dark-skinned, turban-wearing Arabs. We'll put you in control. And, they had control of it. But part of what they were doing with the Balfour mandate was to establish a homeland for the Jews. Israelis and Palestinians were struggling for self-determination and sovereignty over the territory, developing respective movements for their causes. And as World War I began, several controversial diplomatic efforts, some contradicting each other, by the great powers tried to shape the map of the modern Middle East to their liking, their political needs, their nation's interests, and including the Palestinian territories. Palestinians cite a series of letters in 1915 to 1916 between Mecca's emir and the British High Commissioner in Egypt, known as the McMahon-Hussein Correspondence, as outlining a promise of independent Arab states, an independent Arab state. In 1916, the Sykes-Picot Agreement, secretly negotiated between Britain and France, planned to carve up the Middle East into spheres of influence and determined that the land in question was to be internationalized. In 1917, Britain's Foreign Secretary, Lord Arthur Balfour, expressed his government's support for the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people in a letter to Baron Walter Rothschild, the head of the British wing of the influential European Jewish banking family. And so to Israelis, the missive marks a formal utterance of the Israeli state's right to exist. To Palestinians, it was an early sign of their disposition from the region. And the declaration also noted that it was clearly understood that nothing shall be done which may prejudice the civil and religious rights of the existing non-Jewish communities in Palestine, nodding to the overwhelming majority Arab population in the region at the time. So about 90% of the population was Muslim in 1850, and about 80% in 1914. And so a large-scale Jewish immigration followed in succeeding decades, including during Nazi persecution and the Holocaust. And both sides continued to assert their right to statehood. So I'm just going to go because we've only got a minute or so left on the radio. In 1948, Israel declares its independence and becomes a nation. In 1956, you had the Suez Crisis, where the Egyptian president, Abdel Nasser, remember that name? Remember that from my high school days, nationalizes the Suez Canal. In June of 1967, the 1967 War, or the 6-Day War, it was called. We covered that a little bit earlier. September of 1972, the Munich Olympics were attacked. Remember that? Any of you alive that remember when that happened? It was in the news. October of 1973, the Arab coalition attacks Israel. September of 1978, the year I graduated high school, Camp David Accords took place. December of 1987, the first Intifada took place, a Palestinian uprising, while Clinton was trying to sign some peace treaties. 1993, the Oslo Accords. 2000, the second Intifada, or Palestinian uprising, begins after riots broke out. 2006, Hamas elected in Gaza to control Gaza. And December 2008, Israel attacks Gaza. November of 2012, Israel kills the Hamas military chief. Summer of 2014, Hamas kills 3 Israeli teenagers. December of 2017, the U.S. recognizes Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. 2018, protests in Gaza. May 2021, Israeli police raid, Al-Aqsa Mosque. We got 5 seconds and we're out, radio. Sorry, live long and prosper. Join us in the join us on YouTube, and we'll continue some talk about this. We're done on radio, folks. I just cut us off at the very last second there. So let's go out to break, and we'll see you right back here for a little bit of the Captain's Cabin. Thank you for being here.
Join us every weeknight at 9 p.m. Central Standard Time, 10 p.m. Eastern. The Intrepid radio program, a Scotty Roberts Productions broadcast.
Hey folks, this is Scotty Roberts, and this is the Intrepid radio broadcast. I've been broadcasting for about 20 years now, covering such topics as science, politics, the paranormal, weird science, weird world history, archaeology, and the paranormal. Everything from ghosts to cryptids to creepy things that go bump in the night. So every week I bring you 3 new episodes. Come and join my channel and also be a patron to this site. So see the details below, and we'll see you here. Welcome to the captain's cabin. Hey, let me answer a quick question over there because Scott Allen posed it, and I just read it during the break. Scott, if you're still there, you said, I'm always confused by the radio part. Isn't everyone on here via YouTube? No. I will dispel that myth. When I say we are a radio broadcast, we are broadcasting live over on Odyssey Radio. And you can find Odyssey Radio, or it's Subspace Odyssey Radio, but you can find them at odysseyradio.com. And that is our radio show. It broadcasts out to the last numbers I was told by Russ over there. There was an approximation because it goes out through several streams, was that this show you see here in the chat room, you can see anywhere up to 15 to 30 people that are listening to this show in the chat room. The radio show, however, the audio version only, Russ tells me, has gotten roughly 5,000 to 6,000 listeners on average per night. And that's just audio. So you can go over and listen in audio, or you can come over here and watch the YouTube stream. So I think, unbeknownst to a lot of people, the 15 to 30 people that come into the chat room is a tip of the iceberg of the listenership that we have. So there you go. That's how that works. And as you know, my video isn't anything spectacularly wild. It's just me talking. So there's some people that just listen via the radio station. And so there you go. You're still here. Hey, you're welcome, Scott. Thanks for being here, by the way. It's good to have you. And here's Professor Bauer. He's hanging in the wings. I'm going to bring him in right now. How you doing, Professor?
I'm all up in this and that, just like everyone else. How about you?
About the same. All up in this and that. That's a good way to put it. Pearson Castile were carried mostly on internet radio stations. There was a time where we were carried, when Rocky and I were doing radio together, we were carried by, I want to say the Situation Room had 18 different radio stations that were carrying us, if I'm not mistaken. And these are radio stations, with regular call letters. They would pick up the stream and broadcast on terrestrial radio. And now terrestrial radio, as we know, is it's like magazine printing. It's different than it used to be. So that was a few years ago. And Rocky and I, we were talking one day on the Situation Room, how that we counted there was over 28 countries where our show was playing. Now, that's not too hard to get. If you're on an internet station and it's got some modicum of marketing, you're going to pick up people from all over the place. This show, we've had listeners from mostly, since we did this incarnation of the Intrepid radio program over the last 4 to 5 years, we've had listeners in, of course, United States, several in South America, several in Canada. And you almost don't want to go, Professor Bauer, you can correct me on this, but I say if I got Canadian listeners, I almost don't want to say I'm an international radio station. That's Canada.
Well, the way Canada's going right now, and I do have firsthand information. I think that they're just going to end up being our back porch.
Yeah.
We're going to have to go up there and clean them out.
State.
We're going to have, and what's interesting is historically, it was the guy, I can't think of his name, but he was the Secretary of State for Lincoln. Okay. And so this is back in the 1860s.
Seward?
Right?
Was it Seward?
Sewell, maybe?
Sewell or Seward? He was the guy that was knifed the same night that Lincoln was shot?
Yeah, there was some weird stuff going on there, but his grand plan was to add Canada, Alaska, Colombia, and a few of the Caribbean islands to the territory. So, I mean, if he had gotten his way, Canadians wouldn't be speaking whatever that weird language is up there they say about and progress.
Or out and
And
about.
I am going to get serious shit for this, and that's okay. I deserve it.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't have the Queen. They wouldn't have the French crap going on the eastern side. As a little side note, I do have personal experience with this. Back in 1979, I moved to a homestead in Alberta, Canada. It was 90 miles northwest of Calgary, outside of a little town called Sundre. And it was a homestead, a quarter section. And those of you who know me know my love of metrics. So the metrics in this matrix is a quarter section is 160 acres. And a quarter section is a quarter mile square. So I went and lived on that. And while I was up there, even back then, I would take hay. We had 80 acres of it cleared. We'd get about 3,500 bales of Kentucky bluegrass and alfalfa that I'd take to the auction. We get about 3,500 a year, and I'd take about 50 bales a week, as much as I could get on that 56 Chevy pickup and tie it down. And I'd take it into the auction and sell it for anywhere from like $1.20 to $2 a bale at that time.
Nice.
But my point is while I was there, I signed multiple petitions, even though I wasn't a Canadian citizen, that were going around at the time for the West, basically Saskatchewan to British Columbia, to secede from the East. Because at a minimum, in the petition, all the folks in the West didn't want to have anything to do with having to learn French. They didn't want the metric system. They wanted English and, the
dollar, and they wanted,
yeah. And I signed back then. So this is back in the 70s. Canada was going through a number of identity crises and issues, which kind of leads me into your subject for tonight, that everybody is, doesn't matter if you're here, there, or anywhere else. This is passing through your lips and your mind in conversations that you're having, because the global psyche has been turned on. There is this massive, intense event that's very, very isolated and very small, that's wrapped around a very complex set of issues and history. And again, just as my nature is, because of the idea I have that everything is information, and that's what informatica is all about. When you look at the information around this, you find some very interesting pieces of information and data.
Sure.
And some of them make you go, what's going on there?
Yeah.
And I appreciate, I'll say this right up front before I get into just my synopsis of where I think we are at this moment, which is very fluid, but it's also very complex. But it also has patterns. There are patterns in this that are recognizable, and there's some anomalous information that seems to make you go, how does that fit into this?
And I want to ask you a question that relates directly to Israel and Hamas and the Palestinians. But before I do, speaking of information and in the Matrix, let me just finish out where we sidetracked and went to Canada. Saying about this show gets heard in Mexico, Canada, which is slightly international. This show gets heard in Great Britain. This show gets heard in Germany, France, Spain. I've had those three countries. We've had Israel. I've had places in the Ukraine have listened. I've had places way over on the other side. Japan. There's somebody that comes in, Sterling Brew comes in. He's in Japan. So we have Japan. We have New Zealand. And we also have Australia, several places on different ends of Australia. So this show ending that point that we rabbit trailed on, is this show is an international show. So, yes, we've had a lot of listeners to this show. And I don't know what our current standing. I haven't asked Russ in 3 years how many people listen to the show, maybe 4 years. But at the time, he said when this show was in its current inception, about 5,000 to 6,000 on average per evening, per episode. So we'll see. I'll have to ask him. I haven't asked him in a long time. I just do. So we'll see where that goes.
And why is that important, Scotty?
It's only important because somebody asked, is this the only place? He said, Scott Allen asked the question, you keep talking about saying goodnight to the radio station. He says, aren't all the listeners right here in the chat room? And I say, au contraire.
Yeah, I remember that part. I was more speaking to why is it important that many people and even people at all are tuning in. And
it's important. Otherwise, I'm talking to myself, which I could do without setting up a broadcast.
I was going to say, you don't need to get on the show to do that.
Yeah, I don't need to. I can sit in the toilet and go, well, when I was thinking about so I can talk to myself anywhere. For me, the importance of having an audience is being able to disseminate a message, being able to disseminate information, sometimes being able to disseminate frivolity and ADHD comedic humor. So there is some of that.
You have shows with that in it?
I do. And that's like writing. Well, Rocky and I did that a whole hell of a lot.
I know. I remember
on radio with Rocky. Yeah, you were.
Do you remember do you remember that little piece you and I did on Star Trek, the Rocky show, when he asked us to? All of a sudden, we had like 2 or 3 days. He says, "I'm not going to be here. You guys just need to jump in." And we went, "Huh? Okay,
sure, we can do that."
You want what do you want? Oh, never mind. We'll sort it out for you.
We got it, Rock. You take the day. You take the week. You got
it. Well, the point that is important to me that I was trying to guide you.
Oh, I'll just say before you do that, I write books. Why do I write books? So I can put them on my shelf, so people can read them.
Yeah, but the real thing is that so you can put them on your shelf so that people can get them from your shelf.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, well, the bottom line too is to make a living. It'd be nice to make a living at it.
Oh man, but where I was going before we get too squirreled down that hole, is that the importance, in my perspective, is the connection, and it is is what we're experiencing and seeing right now, and this event is one of the reminders of the global connection, is that the decentralized access to content and to be able to communicate has never been where it is right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it is instantaneous. You have citizen journalists, reporters, investigators, researchers, people who have the ability to, and the desire to go gather information in the informatica. That's my little plug there.
Yeah.
Because in whatever anybody does, whatever anybody is able to communicate decentralized like we're doing now, is being able to put that information out for those who are interested and want to know. It's a connection.
Like watching the news. I watched a news clip a little earlier, live from Israel, and a reporter standing in a helmet and combat helmet and giving a live report, talking live with the newscaster, with the anchor. So that's happening live. Now, we've had live reports before for years, but boil it all the way down to the kinds of things you and I do. What if we wanted to go out and say, we're going out, Professor Bauer and I are going out into the deep, dark woods to observe this blank up here, and we're taking you with us, and we're going to set up our phone or our laptop, and we're going to have a transmission that's going out live to whoever wants to tune in and listen to this. So you can share the moment with us. We've done it we're going to do it this Thursday and Friday, or Friday and Saturday. Rainey and I are out with Rocky is going to be up we're doing the ghost investigations at
Nice.
the Phantom's Feast at the Renaissance Festival grounds. We'll be doing live broadcasts from that. And it's to include you in. You can be here. You can see this stuff. And that's the what was the word you used? That inclusiveness, that
it's the connection. It's the connection.
Connection.
It's being able to connect, and this is the way I see it, being able to connect energies and resonances with those that resonate with those resonances and energies.
Yeah.
Because all information is energy and resonance. So I mean, we could diverge, but I'd like to try and stay on topic without going down the rabbit hole.
You and me staying on topic.
Yeah, right.
Tune in here, folks.
The little what did Rocky call his show? The ADHD of radio.
Well, it's like I told Rocky, we're doing ADHD radio. That's we can be talking about this topic right now, you and I, and we go, oh, but you know what? Matchsticks. That's where it's at. And we could veer off into a topic about matchsticks and the efficacious esotericism of matchsticks.
That was loquaciously linguistic and linguistically lovely. Thank you very much.
Why? With my greatest felicitations, I thank you. So,
that was some sweet lip licking. That's what I'd call it. Right there.
Yeah. Hey, why don't I let you lick lips for about 10 seconds? I'm going to walk over there. I'll be able to hear you, so don't get out of line. But I got to go over there and grab something to drink.
I'll see what I can do.
You got 10 seconds.
So while you're over there doing some informative information thing, I'll tee it back up for your return of some of the questions that I have, as I alluded to in my opening diatribe, rant, monologue, or whatever. There's some interesting, it's a very complex situation, and there's some very interesting dynamics.
I'm back, thanks. Oh, no, I'm going. I grabbed the wrong can.
Oh, well, see? There's some very interesting dynamics, very interesting metrics in this matrix of what we are seeing unfold. And some of the ones that I've stumbled into over the since this happened and try to get more clarity on are the following. First of all, aside from the ideological and the historical and the interpersonal, the emotional aspects of what's going on, there's other aspects about where it's going on. And I think that the information about where it's going on is extremely interesting and has some profoundly interesting things, in my opinion. And let's start with the space. The Gaza Strip, where this is going on, is 4 miles wide, 4 to 5 miles wide, and 25 miles long. So it's a strip of 4 by 25 miles.
All right. Yep.
That's where this Palestinian thing is. Okay. So, if you think about how would you relate that to here? So it's basically going from DC up to New York.
Yep.
It's that size of a place. All right. Well, what's in that place? There's apparently around 2 million people that inhabit this thing called the Gaza Strip. The demographics of that are that apparently somewhere around 50% of the inhabitants of that 2 million are average age of 17.
Yeah. That's Pearson Castile in the chat room. Said it's cool to be one of your younger viewers. I think he just turned 18.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So when I see that data, if that data is accurate, and apparently that That's the accepted or the tossed around metrics around the space and the quantity. What's in it? So the first thing that came to my mind was, fuck, 2 million people in 4 by 25 miles. That's a fair amount of packing. There's not a lot of, depending on the allocation to each individual carbon unit, whatever they need, that seems to be divisible into very small amounts, just hypothetically and observationally thinking. So then I said, well, wait a minute. You're telling me half of the population of 2 million people in this 4 by 25 mile space, half of them, their average age is 17, meaning they were born 2006, 2007.
Right.
Okay.
When you put it in those numbers, 2006 to 2007.
What happened then? What was significant about that environment?
A lot of things. I don't know exactly what you're
That's
targeting.
when Hamas.
Are you talking about in Israel?
That's when Hamas
yes,
formally took over in a quote unquote.
Yes, we're voted in Gaza.
Honest election, validated by our own Jimmy Carter, who went there and made a declaration that this was a fair electional process where the Hamas took over from PLO. Arafat died in 2004, 5. This all was in a succession.
Was assassinated.
It was kind of
yeah.
So then just go back to the fundamentals of the metrics here. 4 by 25 miles, 2 million people, half of them teenagers or less. So half of the population has apparently been very busy creating the other half of the population.
Yes.
Just observationally. So that raises some, just a bunch of what? Aside from, the individual questions, what's going on there? And is that unique and important for any particular reason?
Well, I was talking on Sunday about Golda Meir, who was Israeli prime minister from, I don't know from what date to what date. I could look it up. She was the third or the fourth prime minister. And she said, peace will finally come to this region when the Arabs choose to love their children as much as they hate Israel. And because they hate Israel more than they love their children, because they're teaching their children to hate and to kill and to die.
So that is part of, one of the characteristics and attributes that I see of this kind of strange number. How in the hell is half the population teenage or less? And what has occurred? What's been the environment that population has been raised in? Well, it's been very, I guess you could say, programmed and positioned to be radicalized in the ideology of their parents, who is apparently the other half of the population.
It's almost like they're breeding kids to go to war and die.
Well, it's easy enough to come to that probability given those metrics and that circumstance. Yeah. Now, one of the things that that I have found fascinating about so I'm just trying to throw some metrics of measurement that I'm looking at it going, there's some other shit going on here, or maybe this stuff is contributing to what we're seeing. That's what I'm trying to sort through for myself.
Yes.
So looking at the geography, the demographics, and I'm going, that's kind of weird. What's going on there? And is there what else is in there that you can find that may be relevant to the circumstances? You went through very eloquently some of the main historical points and events, and I have heard people with very credible arguments that there never was a Palestinian place.
Yep.
There never was a region or something that had borders that was considered Palestinian,
Right.
right? And in fact, Palestine was a place, not a state.
It was, I covered that. I don't know if you were here at the very beginning.
Yeah, it's a region.
After Rome sacked Israel
Mhm.
back in 70 AD, tore down the Temple of Herod, leveled the land. They left some people there, dragged the others off, killed the most of them. They renamed the whole region Palestine. And it was a regional name. This area where Israel once existed is now Palestine, part of Palestine. That's it. That's what it was for 2,000 years.
So that is rarely from the discourse that I've seen, that's rarely a part of the consideration and the construct of the context. Okay. It's very limited to the victim and the oppressor. Okay. And the victim, and one of the things we've seen aside from this, which I think is very applicable to what we're saying now, we've seen in spades being tossed at the fabric, the cultural fabric of society, with this whole thing of the victims have become, they've gotten a place of preference over the oppressors, or who are defined as the oppressors. And the majority of that has been a manipulated grift of language and mentality to get people to think, well, I'm in a certain class. I'm a victim according to the classification of that class. Therefore, I am a victim, and therefore I am entitled, owed, and so forth, to degrees of what would be considered illegal. And this victim ideology and mentality enables them to say, well, I don't have to worry about the laws and stuff anymore because I've been elevated. My victimness has been elevated to a state of having priority and preference. I can go loot a store. I can go take things. I can go smack somebody upside the head because I think that what they think is dangerous and it's viral and it needs to be taken out, because it's essentially what people are doing. So if you think about who are these, if there was only a place, a region, there wasn't a civilization, there wasn't a culture of Palestinians. It was the Levant in the Hebrew times, which people keep using the term Jew. They are not Jews, they are Hebrews. Jew was a word that was introduced in the Middle Ages to give a name to the Hebrews.
Religious specificity is all.
Exactly. So again, going to what are the fundamentals of the metrics that are being used to analyze what the hell this information said is telling us. So continuing on that path of there is no Palestinian culture. There isn't a genetic race, a group of Palestinians. They are Arabs who, for the most part, and this is pretty demonstrated by all of the stuff that we have available to us, they are a group of gypsies and nomads. They do not have a cultural identity. They are Arabic and Muslim in their belief system, but their mentality and the way that they be is gypsies and nomads. They don't want to go participate and be in any culture or civilization. They just want to be and kind of hang out. They're the bohemians, if you will, of the Middle East. That's their character. So going back to you got 4 to 5 miles wide, 25 miles long, 2 million people, half of them under 17 or under. Okay, well, what's a characteristic of those folks? Well, at a minimum, the 17 to newborns have been raised by parents and people who, during that period of time, have had this ideology. What's the chances of the kids getting the same stuff? Probably pretty high.
Yeah, very high.
Right?
Let me address something before we go on with that thought. This is a good place to break that. Elvis brought up something in the chat room. And I've got to say something about it and put in your 2 cents worth, everybody sitting here. He said, I could care less about Israel because we have veterans that are homeless, veterans that are hungry, veterans that need our help. I agree with you, Elvis, but there's one thing I want to make very clear, and I've made this point before on other issues, is that even though we have a veteran issue that needs care with our country, we've also got an immigration issue. We've got an education issue. We've got sexual issue. We've got crime issues. We've got all these issues, domestic issues going on. We also have international issues going on that affect us. You can say Afghanistan, Ukraine, Russia, China, Taiwan, Israel, Jordan, Iran, Iraq, all these nations. These are all things that are our international interest is not the word I'm looking for, but interest that we have, things that we need to have interest in. So when I see, I've done the same thing, Elvis. I've said, well, what about our home stuff, our veterans? Well, both of those issues have to be taken care of. We have to take care of our veterans, but we also have to take care of issues, other domestic issues.
Bro.
We can't say we're not going to take care of homelessness because we're taking care of hunger, or something like that. We have to do both consecutively. We can't take care of veterans because we have to take care of immigration. No, we have to do them both at the same time.
Equally important and
interest there.
Yeah, equally important and but non sequitur. They are symptoms. They are not a part. They are not another problem. They are symptoms of an overall problem, because all of these manifestations, like he's bringing up, are the result of this programming stuff that has been happening that I'm talking about. So going back to this situation that's going on, there seems to be, I'm going to summarize the metrics that I just went through. There seems to be a group of people that have been programmed very specifically into a very unique and very targeted perspective and ideology that live in a very small place, and they are confined to that place, and half of them are young kids.
It's almost like the perfect pressure cooker of emotion, programming, nowhere to go to lash out. And I was going to tell you, when I saw that, I'm a veteran. I got my own fight with the VA right now to pay for my school. But, I can say, I got brothers and sisters I see down there every time that I go to the VA to sort anything out are in desperate need. But I would rather see my money that I pay in every time, they write me a check, because I'm 1099. I pay 3-4 times a year, but I'd rather see my money go to Israel than I would to Ukraine. And
that's because of the way that you look at the two different scenarios. They are not, again, that's a non sequitur, meaning basically it's a symptom. It's not a relatable or analogous set of circumstances and response. This issue that's going on right now, and I'm gonna, are we still on YouTube? Have we gone into the time travel tunnel where this is not going to get censored?
Yeah, maybe.
You're asking me that.
Yeah. See, I was waiting for you to think about what I just said. So, all right. So here I'm going to go. I'm going to throw it out there and we'll see what happens. Yeah. So I think putting that data set aside, that seems to have some serious questions. Why is there a small amount of people who have an age group that has all been just schooled and programmed with a certain ideology to have a perspective that is not a happy one for anyone? What are they doing in a very small piece of land and being focused? How is that energy being focused? So apparently one of the characteristics of these people, and it seems to be generally accepted, that the gypsy lifestyle and modality is, it's irreverent, it's independent, it doesn't deal with authority well, and so it kind of does its thing, but it does its thing, it doesn't stay within the lines. And what happens is they apparently get thrown out for misbehaving wherever they go. They've been thrown out of Egypt, Syria, Jordan, Lebanon, wherever they go, they've been thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
And they end up in this thing 4 miles wide, 25 miles long, with 2 million people in it. It's like one of the, I was going on earlier, and thank God we got diverted, but I'm coming back now. One of the things that you hear about this victimhood thing is the oppressed, i.e. victims, have it so bad, and how can you even consider or ponder the carnage that's happening to this 2 million people, half of which are teenagers or younger? There's this set of circumstances that says, well, if that's all you're looking at, that sucks, because it's what we would call a protected class. Children, 500,000 children, or 1 million children, are at risk in this open air concentration camp.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, I got something about that. Years ago, I had, like I said, now I'm doing the whole therapy and or whatever thing, learning to do that. And it's starting to kind of more sink in. And I had a guy tell me one time, I had to go talk to him. He said, in a relationship, if you lose every relationship you ever had, you had to look back at the common denominator. And the common denominator to every relationship, friendship, romantic, is yourself. So you are the common denominator. So if they have been throughout everywhere they've ever been, and this is their last hope, and now they're acting an ass because nobody else wants them, the common denominator at the focus is the person who's been kicked out of everywhere they go because, one, they don't want to conform. Two, they don't know how to act right in a crowd. But and when you can't do that, they are the first ones to scream, "I'm oppressed. I'm a victim. Nobody likes me. I just want to get along."
It's a highly effective programming technique that we're watching unfold before our eyes.
Yeah.
So now I'm going to say this: the thing that'll probably get us banned, kicked off, and probably some knocks at the door.
Oh,
you ready?
Yeah, me and the dog's ready.
Do it. I just threw up Anita Palmer's post. I was going to say something like this, Anita and others. Smiling Bandit, I'm not sure who you are. Make America Great Again. Don't know who you are. Welcome to the show, by the way. If you have been here before and I just don't know these current monikers you're using, maybe I know who you are. I don't know. You make some points, but you're saying that Israel was warned by Egypt a week ago. Well, the attacks happened, 4 days ago?
Yeah.
So we were warned about Pearl Harbor. Yep. I don't think that means there was any wrongdoing or any conspiracy. I think it's that they probably, what did they say about some of the attacks that have happened here, like 9/11? We were warned this was going to happen. Well, we were warned about 10 different scenarios like that every day of the week for 10 years. And it's like, how many of them do you follow up immediately and say, there's credibility to this, we have to follow this? How many of them are just warnings? Well, yeah, we know. I think Israel is a government that is always on the alert because it is surrounded by enemies.
Oh, yeah.
And people want to see their destruction.
So, well, they're not only on alert, but they have some of the most awesome tech, both military and electronic, in the world. In fact, they've been sought after for their code and their prowess in tech for decades. I mean, they've been known to like, hey, if is the cat's over in Israel, they got their. But the same thing. See, that's one of the interesting things about the reality of the stuff that we're in is
Mhm.
is where you think it probably is or went, and then some. And that's what that's what I think that this awakening that we're seeing unfold before our eyes is that people are going, wait a minute, what I thought was this is
Right.
actually that. And a few
I
of
do
those-
want to say to the
Yeah.
Smiling Bandit, I don't see Israel declaring war on Iran today. I
No.
saw them declaring war on Hamas. Now,
You-
Hamas being funded by Iran is a fact. We already know this. So is Iran behind it? Maybe. Did Israel let 900 of its own people die so they could declare war on Iran? I'm glad you're here, Smiling Bandit. You don't have to go away because I disagree with you. But I disagree with that statement. I don't believe Israel let 900 of its own people die. If you know of the nature and character of Israel, you would not be able to make that statement. That is
Well,
not who
Scotty,
they are.
can I chime in on that?
Sure.
I think Smiling Bandit is actually right. And that's where I was going to go with
Okay.
this, where we're going to get we'll get knocks on the door after I say this. So, did Israel know? And if they did know, would they let it happen? Yes. Is that probably what happened? Yes. Is they did they allow it to happen for taking advantage? What is it? Let no good crisis go to waste.
No, right.
Did they allow it to happen knowing it would happen, and or did it for their benefit in the longer? I mean, this is right out of.
Did they want it
war,
to
as
happen
far
and
as
didn't
I'm
realize there'd be a loss of
And-
1,000 lives? I don't know.
Well, no. Do you think that 9/11 was any different here? Our intelligence, our infrastructure, our governmental system in some way was involved in that. It was not what there's definitely not, from my perspective, what the official narrative is. Just like JFK's
I think it was not the official
It's like
narrative.
everything that
I
we've
am
been
not-
told from the government on the narrative of an event is not only most likely completely wrong, but it seriously needs to be investigated and re-examined and taken a look at, because there is more shit. And that's a great thing about
Sure.
time. The more time goes, the more information becomes available.
Well, are
And
you
it's
talking
just-
also then about
It's awesome. how that-
unscrupulous people within the ranks of these governments that know that this is going to happen and they want it to happen so they can declare war on someone else? It's almost like, sorry to say this, it's like watching General Kang of the Klingons, trying to wag the tail of the dog and make a war happen with the Federation. Sorry to use such a lame example. But there
No,
you
but
go.
I totally got it, and I totally appreciate it, and I knew
There
you
it
were
is.
going, so I love you for that. But let me.
We're
I haven't
Vietnam.
said what's going to get us fucked yet.
Okay. Hey, Amanda.
So, did Israel know this was coming? Yes. Did they allow it to happen? Yes. Did they have a reason for it to happen, to take advantage of it, knowing that there was going to be collateral damage? That's what happens in war. That's what happens in strategy. That's what the art of war, Sun Tzu. This is right out of
Sun Tzu,
okay?
however, never would have said sacrifice thousands of your own people to gain the advantage that you're seeking. I don't find that. I got the art of war right here, the mini version of it. I don't find that anywhere.
You're trying to be too specific with the generality of the awareness.
Okay, I get that.
If indeed that there is a cost, the cost is weighed in the context of the results that you're looking for. That is yin and yang. That is the nature of the flow of reality. But here's what I think they probably, to me at this time, makes the most sense in the construct of the context of the data we have. Did they know what's going to happen? Yes. I even think, I'll add, that I think that it was not planned by it it was planned by someone else, and Hamas was the executor. And that planning is something that has been around and has been driving it for decades, at least. That planning also knew that the planning, the information, those involved in the planning were a part of Israel. So the entire op was known, and it was allowed to happen to take advantage of the results. This is your Hegelian dialectic, problem, solution, response, right?
Sounds like Voltaire, Candide.
Same thing.
This is how it's always been, so this is how it's meant to be.
So this is how it's meant to be, right?
So if you then tie in some of the anomalous connections to this scenario, so you have Israel's been dealing with this gypsy nomadic tribe of people that have adopted the identity of Palestinians. There are no Palestinians because there isn't a Palestine where a culture of Palestinians exist. Palestine was a region that people went there and adopted the region. They weren't a cohesive cultural group. They were essentially, as I was saying, they were basically gypsies and nomads. They were, they were Renaissance folks.
Sure,
Scotty.
Now, there it is.
They were.
I don't know,
and they were floating.
I don't know this for certain. Uncle David used it as a reference one time to me. But he said that under Islam, once they have raised 3 generations on a land, then that land belongs to Islam. Now, I don't know if I don't have that as firsthand information. Maybe someone listening does. Glad to have them pop up. But you're talking about the number of people in the Gaza Strip in that age bracket, which in probably what, Professor, half the world? That's both military age and breeding age.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure it's half, but yeah, that is a perfect point and a perfect data set pointing to the problem that we are experiencing here in the United States as it relates to this southern border issue.
I turned off.
I mean, you don't, and this goes back to the citizen journalist and investigative researcher reporter that we were talking about, that you, Scotty, me, Rocky, John, we've been doing this for a few years, right at the beginning of when it was starting to get set up. We are now seeing a tsunami of content that is being made available. And in that content is information, informatica.
Right.
It is the stuff that's going on. So the key is in my opinion, is being able to see that stuff and filter through it so that you end up with some, at least an actionable data set of what's going on so you can navigate through it.
Amanda, they're already here.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think has been happening with the millions of people crossing our border unchecked in the last 3 years?
But you know what?
They're here.
And Amanda, just real quick, if you want to see one of the original sleeper cell concepts, go see Telephone, which is Charles Bronson from, I think, 1975, 76.
Yep.
And it's all about a Russian activation of sleeper cells that have been there since the 40s. Yeah. And it's done. I mean, Charles Bronson is badass in it. But anyway, there you go. Check it out.
Also, we were talking about this.
Solid Green, too. You need to check that out, too.
13 years ago, we were talking about this, about the forms of jihad that exist. And one form of jihad, I do not remember the name of it. One form of jihad was the type of jihad that is bred in to a society. Meaning, and this might go along with something you said about the three generations, is that maybe that's the same thing you're talking about, is that you would find Muslims, rather than go to war, it's called bloodless jihad or something like that. It was where you would breed in to a culture, into a society, and you would have children and you would have grandchildren. And by the time those grandchildren reached age of having children, you've got, in essence, for lack of a better way to put it, a voting block. This is why you had in Minneapolis, after 35 years of Muslim immigration into Minneapolis, you had in the Riverside district, Uncle John, you would know this well. Riverside, the Cedar Riverside district is the theater district in Minneapolis, and you would see arts and theater. You saw the Muslim population there was so strong, they wanted to vote in Sharia law into the city council, or that part of Minneapolis. And so this was bloodless jihad, the breeding in jihad. So that might be what you were talking about.
Well, it's clear that when you have a controlled environment that has a limited information set, and the environmental experience is very, very restricted and very limited, that's all you're going to get, or it's going to have, not all you're going to get. You're going to have, that's going to dominate the influence of the outcome of the time that it's exposed to.
Right.
That is what okay, so I don't think I got to where we all get knocks on the door. So here's what I think is going to happen. Did Israel know? Yes. Did they allow it? Yes. Was the collateral damage a part of the calculation? Yes. Is the end goal something different? Absolutely. What is that end goal? What are the circumstances around this whole meme and theme? There's a regional disconnect with the people who are Hebrews that call themselves Jews and the Arabs, who are a wide, multifaceted manifestation of that belief system. And they don't get along. Just like Christians seem to, even with all the sects of Christians, they don't have outright wars. They just don't engage. They just kind of leave each other alone. The folks over in the Middle East that have adopted the Muslim belief system, they get whacked out about their belief and their brother's belief, which is different. They get wonky about it, and it's not pretty. And they've been doing it for millennia. They've been doing it since their history began. So there's an inherent nature of conflict built into that gene set, that regional expression of humanity. So bring it forward. If Israel's got these people that are funding this small group of people who have been clearly ideologically brainwashed and programmed, who are the people doing that? Well, the main, what appears to be the main antagonist in the entire story is Iran. What are the characteristics of Iran? Well, they got these towel-headed mullahs.
Uh-oh.
Oh, we got locked.
Uh-oh.
Oh, there we go. See, I told you we were going to get tagged.
There it was. As soon as you said towel-headed, you went blank.
Yeah, but
and I got nothing against their dress. I think
don't either.
In the Middle East have got the sweetest threads, man. I would wear that shit all day long. But my point is this: in Iran, the folks that are running the place are a small minority of a theologically intense and extreme belief system that the rest of the country is not interested in. The majority of Iran, the people there they love the West. In fact, you go back and get on YouTube and do Tehran in the 70s or 80s. and check out any of the videos. It looks like it was fucking Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Disco.
Okay.
Everybody having a good time.
They were totally into, we want what the West is doing, and they were doing it. They still want that.
Yes.
So
You
I
look
think
at
that,
pictures of Iran taken in Tehran during the 1960s into the 70s. They look just like Americans waiting at a Beatles concert. So
one of the meetings, and I could have the group or the time wrong, but this was of the same caliber. I think it was Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill actually met in Tehran as a part of one of the meetings. I forgot what there was a name to the series and the events that occurred as a result of this. But one of the cities they met was in Tehran, and it was fucking gorgeous.
yeah.
So if Israel knew what was going to happen, they accepted the collateral cost of it. They are going to leverage it to deal with this group of people that seem to be, there's some weird shit going on. Somebody needs to fix that. That environment is nothing more than putting a bunch of bad shit into the oven and turning it up.
Yep. Now, by the way, Smiling Bandit, I don't agree with this. I really don't. I don't believe that the primary goal of Israel is to create a pretense for genocide in Palestine. I don't believe that. You'd have to show me more information on that. That is a presumption. That is a presumption.
Well, wait a minute. Let me jump in here. Isn't
Yep.
genocide used in the sense and the reference to a genetic group? Right? It would be Russians,
to wipe out a
Jews,
certain people group.
some ethnicity, right?
Yeah.
Well, we just went through that the Palestinians are not an ethnicity. If the only ethnicity they are is Arab, they are not a mixture of Jews and Slavs and different Eastern and Middle Eastern cultures. They're just a group of gypsies.
Yeah.
They don't have that same genetic, which you would need to have, in my opinion.
I don't.
in the
I
use
don't
of the
think
word
Israel
genocide.
exists.
It's not a genocide. It's cleaning out some shit that needs to be cleaned out.
Right.
Yeah.
I do not think Israel exists today to operate under the pretense of wanting to commit genocide on the Palestinian territory. I don't believe that for a heartbeat.
No, I don't either.
Scotty,
that they
can
drive
see what
allies to
Professor's
war with
saying.
Iran. I think that there's something to that because I think Iran needs to be. Iran is a terroristic state and a sponsor of terrorism.
Iran needs to be sanitized.
It does.
I mean, you think about it. If you've basically got this 5 or less percent. I'm kind of spongy on the numbers, but it seems like it's this very small group. Same shit that we actually have here. It's a small group. It's not the majority. This whole thing about there are no red states or blue states. No, there are nothing but red states. There's blue cities and blue concentrations, but there are not anything. So that kind of statistical analysis is what's used to confuse people and
I will say
and make them not realize that, wait a minute, the numbers, the equivalencies here don't make any sense. That's where the information is important.
If you use a red state, blue city analogy, I would say as a conservative, I would love to see blue cities wiped out. That doesn't mean I want genocide.
No.
It doesn't mean I want to see.
Come on. I've heard you back a show.
I've heard you when we're drinking pints.
But, I've heard some little different theories.
But see, I think there's
that's why they took Jericho off the air.
Yeah.
But I was going to tell you, Scotty, I see what the professor's saying. Anymore in the society we live in, it's all about the optics. So if you have a good reason, it's about like when Iran fucked around and put a mine in the Persian Gulf, and they made a really, really bad mistake. They did something to raise gas prices. And once you raise gas prices, especially with Reagan in office, he's like, "Oh, you hit one of our destroyers, we're going to make this proportionate." And 8 hours later, their whole fucking navy was fucked.
Mm-hmm.
So then they decided they wanted to fight a little more. And he's like, "Look, now you need to admit you made a mistake, and we won't deal with this later. But if the American people find out you're still trying to start some shit, we're going to fuck you up." And so they backpedaled a lot, and they're like, "Oh, my bad, somebody's finger hit the button." But they lost most of their modern navy in less than 8 hours, and I think they still hold a grudge. I've been there. These people won't let shit go. So if Israel needed, the optics to look like this was payback in a what's the word I'm looking for? Not an overkill scenario, but in the opposite. If it was a reasonable response,
Yeah, tit for tat.
Tit for tat. And it don't look like they just going to start some shit because every time they try to clean these people out, the world leaders come out and say, "Oh no, Israel stays handcuffed so much." Everybody's like, "Oh, well, you can't do that. You can't do that."
Well, here, just to that point, Michael. Sorry to interrupt you, but think about this. In Israel, going back to we did the demographics and the geographics of this space that this shit's happening in.
Yeah.
Okay, so now go to the same metrics of Israel. Israel is 10 times the size, I think, in total, like 50 million square miles or something, whatever the numbers are. And in that same space, there are not only Hebrews or Jews, but they're Hebrews, Christians, Arabs, and they all not only live and work there, but they are in the government. They have equal participation in that society.
Oh, what's the one church they got over there where they all go in and they've had the same ladder setting up under this window because this worker forgot to move it like in 16 some hundreds.
Yes.
And they say, "Well, why don't you move the ladder?" All of this internal people have to get along. They have to vote. They have to agree for somebody to go up and remove this ladder out under this window where this guy forgot 500 fucking years ago. Yeah. And I'm like, Jesus Christ! I saw that because I watch a lot of YouTube. YouTube's more entertaining to me than anything that they put on network TV. It's real life. It's raw.
If you know where to look, it is the most content and valuable resource anywhere, because you can learn and do. It's just like we were talking earlier, Scotty. I think that's one of the things that makes this unique is the decentralized communication and connection with people to share stuff like we're talking about.
Did you know the first guy who did like a YouTube thing? It was Tom Green. As screwed up as Tom Green is, he is what brought the podcast and like all the YouTube videos. That's back when he had like a little fame to his name. He had a network bring all of their cameras and everything up, dropped all, I think it was probably a T1 connection in, so he could broadcast it out of his house. And that's what started all this. But no, I just saw that about the U.S. Liberty incident.
I want to answer that. I don't know much about it. But as a going concern, but I do know that it was during the 1967 war, and Israel claims that they mistook the USS Liberty for an enemy ship, and they bombed it and sank it, killed 34 people, and they came out and they claimed it was a mistake. And what do you do when a mistake happens? You go, "Here, take 34 of our people and kill them." Is that what would be how they would answer for it? No. What they did, though, they paid the equivalent of the amount they paid at the day to the survivors was, in today's standards, about $30 million. They apologized, made an international apology, and paid close to $30 million by today's standards in reparations. That to me doesn't sound like they never answered for it.
No.
So I'm not, and Smiling Bandit, I'm not just trying to pick on something you said. I do want to make a point, though. You seem very strongly to want to, you're pushing a certain narrative behind what you're saying, and I understand that, and that's allowed here, and you can do that. I disagree with your premise, and therefore I start to, maybe this is my problem, I start to see some of the comments you're saying as trying to support that premise. I don't think Israel is out there trying to undo alliances. I don't think they're trying to kill their own people. I don't think that they would kill their own people to make a point, to go to war. We're here to protect our people. So let's secretly have 1,000 of them killed so we can protect the rest. That makes no sense to me for what I know of Israel, and as long as I've studied Israel.
Well, but to your point, Scotty, it's the same thing that
incident. I think Israel did answer to that.
Well, to your point, then it's the same thing I was saying earlier, Scotty. It's not that they knew that there might have been. First of all, if they knew it was going to happen and they knew there was going to be collateral damage, then whatever that number was, I don't think it was. I think they probably had some good statistics or analytics, predictive things that said, well, we think if this happens, there's going to be somewhere in this range. But I don't think the idea
crunches everywhere
where language gets fucked up.
Yeah,
it's the way that it's presented. It's not that they picked a number and said, well, this is okay, we're going to let this go.
Right.
No, it was, there's going to be this, we expect it to be in this range, and we are going to accept that as a part of the cost of letting this happen. Because I still don't think I got to this. Maybe I just did. I think the ultimate goal is they are going to take. Oh, I did. They're going to take out the mullahs, and the mullahs being taken out are going to be cheered, whether overtly or covertly, by the majority of the Arab world. The Saudis, the Sunnis, the Shia, all the different iterations of the Arab world. Some of them will say face and they won't say much, or they'll be silent, or they'll murmur discontent. But collectively, there's going to be, this needs to happen. This is needed to happen, because if this didn't happen, we'd be dealing with this. It's kind of like going in and removing the cancer, taking the tumor out.
So I'd like to submit a couple ideas
we're about to see.
And somebody also asked earlier, and I think it was Anita Palmer, why are we friends with Israel? Why are we allies? And I think I called up some things here a long time. I was going to include this earlier and didn't get to it tonight. But I've got a few reasons here that Israel is our ally today. And I only answer this now because Smiling over there said something, Smiling Bandit said something about because many that are, the West makes excuses because they're the chosen people. And we see this through Christian or Christianized.
Can I just shut this down right now? I mean, Smiling Bandit.
No, let me make this point here.
Yeah.
I think there's a reason. Hold on to your thought, Professor. There's a reason we support Israel. I think there's an historical context, which is that the U.S. we've backed Israel since 1948 because we stood for them becoming a nation. Okay, that's the historical reason. They played the mediator post-World War II. Then we have a strategic importance over there. Mutual interests in democracy, human rights. Israel is a counterterrorism. I was going to say counterterrorism ally. They have public and electoral sentiments. 73% of Americans view Israel favorably. Jewish and evangelical influence in electoral politics. There's economic backing, 3.8 billion military aid and 850 million economic aid to Israel just last year alone. We've got financial reasons to back them. Diplomatic challenges. The U.S.'s mediating role between Israel and Palestine, managing the Israeli-Gaza situation, or as managed or mismanaged or ill-managed as you think it might be, that's part of the process. And the overall relationship synopsis. is based on mutual interests, public opinion, economic ties, complicated by Israeli-Palestine conflict. And so these are the things. There's underlying strategic interest, sure. There's perception. There's political implications. There's financial pillars in U.S. aid. There's intricacies of diplomacy. But there is a U.S.-Israel bond that has always been there. It's like, what would Great Britain have to do for us to say, you are no longer our ally, when they've strategically been our ally for a couple of 100 years? So anyway, that's my thinking on that. Professor, I didn't mean to shut you out. I hope you didn't leave. I see your picture.
He has a place card.
No, just wait. Let me make this point before you jump back in.
Couple other considerations. If Hamas behaves like Hamas towards these hostages, they have already connected Iran. They've connected Iran financially to the operation.
Yeah. Well, Hamas came right out and said Iran backed us.
Yeah. And if that being the case, Israel could have, under international law, justification for taking out their entire nuclear capability.
And they're well capable of doing it.
And everybody would breathe a sigh of relief. Now the other thing is,
Sarah was here too. Where'd she go? She disappeared.
Oh no.
The other thing is, come on back, guys. The other thing is, Europe is watching the Ukraine. The United States is watching Israel. China is watching Taiwan.
Yep.
If they move right now, everybody's going to be too darn busy to have an opinion, because it'll all be over too fast.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's that.
Just a thought.
Yep.
I know I'm pleasant to have around.
I know.
No, it's good. It's good.
It is good.
Well, I try to look at things.
Think, Professor.
What are they going to make of all of us making all this fuss right now?
They want the world tied in.
Yeah.
Biden proved to Russia that we wouldn't get involved in Ukraine, at least not in any meaningful way that would prevent him doing what he did.
Yep.
But we then got involved to a certain extent. Now we're dealing with the situation in the Middle East. If the world gets any more complicated than it is in the next 3 months, and before we have a chance to have another national election, I think China will move against Taiwan.
Yeah.
Just looking at the pragmatic politics, geopolitics of the situation.
Yeah. Professor, where'd you go? Are you here? Your mic went from mute.
Where am I? Am I here? Can you see me? Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
I don't see you.
Where did I go?
I don't know. Where'd you go? Bathroom?
Well, I definitely did that. I had to recycle some liquids.
That's why I was late.
Now, you wanted to put something all to bed here just when I said, let me finish this point. What was it you wanted to put to bed? And Sarah, come back in wherever you went.
Yeah. I'm only here because of Sarah. So here's what was that, guys? I didn't see. Is that a Facebook comment? This Patriot, whatever his name is,
Smiley something. Smiling Bandit and Make America Great Again.
Type comments. If you have something to say, come on and show your face. And
come on in. You can call in.
Well, what I wanted to, what I was saying when I saw that, and I said I wanted to put this to bed. The comments that I've seen that individual post are just the effective use and the focus of the perception on just the show and the actors in the show. That's a symptom. So if you're focusing on who did this and did they say, make up for it, and if we did this, why did they do that? Why didn't somebody get compensated for something they clearly did? Then, all that kind of stuff that is getting caught in the show. That's multiple movies on one screen.
Right.
And it's designed for you to focus on those individual parts and not miss what's going on in the entire show. And that's the point that I was talking about with these metrics. When you break it down using first principles approach to thinking and to looking at stuff, which is you go to the nut of the nugget and you take that nugget and you knock it around in your noggin and you see where it connects, what it bounces off of, what it has resonance with and doesn't. And that's where you start to develop the most important thing, which is the bullshit filter.
That's what I was going to say.
If you
get difficult bullshit filter, you can kind of see through it more. It comes with age.
The most important skill set that any human can be taught is the understanding of that there is a bullshit filter. It is your resonance with what makes sense to you and what doesn't, and it's what fuels your curiosity, your imagination, your pursuit, and your intent, and all the awesome things that happen when you engage on that flow of energy, because that's how it works.
There you go.
So when you think about the bullshit filter and you just bring it right down to the gnat's gnat, your bullshit filter is, okay, here's the information. How does it resonate? Is it hitting any of the, because we got hundreds of filters that we manage our information input from. How's it bouncing? It's kind of going, this is pretty good. Let me bring this in over here. Mm-hmm. And that's how we actually experience the reality that we have. When you apply that filter to the stuff that's going on over here in the Middle East, it seems to be on the bigger scale, from my opinion, to be an event that has been planned and is purposely being orchestrated for a result that has been kind of thought through, but not well thought through.
See, I don't think it was. I don't think it was spontaneous. I do think it was planned. I think that there is a goal. I don't think. I happen to not believe that Israel was part of the planning of that. Maybe the part of taking.
They can be aware of it without being a part of it.
You can be aware of it without being part of it. Sure.
Because that takes the handcuffs off of Israel to do what needs to be done.
Michael, you start out so soft, I end up talking over you half the time because I don't hear you. I'm sorry about that.
I was going to say, I like I said, because I've been there, I've trained with the IDF, and they're very calculating people. They are very, very calculating people. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times the United States keeps Israel in their box. You know what I'm saying? Well, you can't overreact. No, you can't do that. But if they are dead bodies in Israel, they can always go to the United Nations and say, well, what would you do if this happened on your doorstep? What makes us any different? So the end result can be Israel can clean up the mess of gypsies, or like Professor said, and there's not, and optically, it don't look like they're the oppressor, they're the bad guys. They are reacting to an action that happened to them, and they was not the aggressor. So, if you sit back, it's like letting a bully hit you so you can beat his ass, and only one of you gets sent home from school.
So, you bring up something interesting here that is another one of the questions I've got with the metrics of the matrix we're looking at. If you look at it, and again, one of the most important things about fine-tuned bullshit filter is to have an observational neutrality.
Yeah.
So you have to look at data, sans get as much as you can. You got to acknowledge the emotion and all the bullshit that's being added to it to fuel it up and make it bigger than it is. But you have to separate that from the actual data of what's going on,
Yeah.
because that's where you see the nut of the nugget, the first principles thing, and all that shit. So when I look at this, okay, wait a minute. I can see we went through the demographics and the geographics of the place this is happening, the characteristics of the inhabitants on both sides. Now you look at it and you go, well, what could be the motivation for something like this to happen? So what could possibly motivate the people who carried out this attack? What could be the motivation and the strategy that they employed in executing this event? Step back, look at it observationally. Well, apparently this is a couple of million of oppressed people that have got a long history of conflict and chaos within themselves. And apparently they don't get along with everybody else in the region because they kept getting shoved back into this place. Nobody else wants them. And now they've decided that in order for us to make some kind of improvement in our circumstances, we think that executing this kind of an event is going to give us the kind of outcome that we would desire from where we are. So what is it, that strategy? What is it that they think that you could imagine somebody in that position would think this is going to be good for us? How do you think through that? What could be the possibilities?
But everybody is capable. You're talking about on a corporate level. I can see it. If it's a
no, I'm talking about ideological, not corporate.
People,
just
okay,
ideology.
not corporate, ideological level. I could say ideologically, I want the bullies to stop picking on my little daughters.
Yeah.
Does that mean I will draw those bullies into a conflict so I can wipe them out?
Well,
no, because I have, along with my ideology, I have a philosophy that I govern myself by.
That's where you need to make that's where the premise would be wrong from my perspective. Wanting to prevent that situation is not an ideological one. That is a physical and reality one. Ideologically would be something where you say, my belief says that what I'm encountering is not only not fair, but it should not exist. So my preservation of self gives me the sense that I can go eliminate that because I don't like it. Not that it threatens me, but because it exists and my ideology says that is evil, I have to eliminate it. Because that's what's happening. Mm-hmm. All of the little manifestations and the symptoms of this ideological conflict that goes back genealogically at least 2 or 3 millennia. It got really kicked up in the last millennia, but this is an isolated group of ideological, philosophical, cultural, societal systems that have a difficult time working with the rest of the same around the planet. So there is something wrong with the group of people that inhabit this, and that is my point. There is an ideological, psychological construct that creates an adherent of it to be less than harmonious with the rest of culture. It doesn't fit in well anywhere. That's why it keeps getting kicked out. That's why it gets isolated. That's why it's in a 4 by 25 mile section and it's not doing well at all. It's an ideology, and it's not because there's not good people, but the people have been programmed and they've been infected. They've been transformed. They've been zombieized in the first order of what that means. There is a mental virus, a parasite that is created, has been purposely introduced and created a group that is now in this situation that we're all talking about.
Okay.
And they are not, there's no champion, there's no guru, there's no leader, there's no nothing, because why? You can't put a leader on a group of gypsies.
Right, and I understand that. Now, Sarah just said, I wish you would call back in, Sarah. They are trying to turn an occupation and be acknowledged into a nation. I'm not sure I'm quite deciphering your sentence structure there.
I hear what you're saying. Yes,
I get what she's saying.
But
I would say,
how is it an occupation?
trying to be acknowledged as a nation, you don't do that by committing terrorist atrocities. That's like saying Black Lives Matter, who burned down the Minneapolis neighborhood where I used to live, they were just trying to make sure they had equal rights. Like, fuck, they were. They were rioting. They were committing atrocious acts.
and they were doing it because of an ideology that mentally gave them that as an outlet for the emotions and the constructs that they have been told.
I'm sorry, but there are right and wrong ways to do things.
Yes.
You can get acknowledged for your ideological stance. You can do things because that's within your bailiwick of how you want to express yourself, but that doesn't mean it's the right way to do that. You don't commit murder. You don't burn down innocent people's businesses and homes because you want to make a point about you feeling like you're suppressed by whatever.
Wait a minute. Hold on. I'm confused because I grew up thinking that exact thing. I thought that I was the center of the universe. I thought that there was nothing or anyone that could get in my way of being me, because why? I was a child of the 60s and 70s. We were told that free love, free expression, leave me the fuck alone. Let me go be who I be. And that includes not only with what, but with what I wanted. Yeah. I could be as I decided that the opportunity provided. Okay. Yeah. I was going, wait a minute, what's this PCP stuff?
And Sarah, I would tell that to the Crusaders if that wasn't 1,100 years ago. So I don't agree with what the Crusaders did, by the way.
People always want to live in the past, and if you're living in the past, goddamn, you're doomed to repeat it. And like Professor said, they have been through out of every place they went because they don't know how to get along with other people.
Mm-hmm.
How can you be occupied to be turned into a nation if you've been through out of every place you hang your hat? The common denominator to the whole scenario is the people who are being an asshole. If you get through out of every party you're invited to, sooner or later, people don't want to invite you to their fucking party.
Yep.
So here's something that's interesting to me. These from the publicly available, and I'm sure that this is probably low, but the publicly available information is that this 4 mile by 25 mile space of 2 million people gets over $6 billion a year in aid.
Yeah.
Now, 2.4 reasons.
Yeah.
2 million people is a fair amount of people, but we've already established that half of them are kids. They're teens and young. Right. It's like, okay, well, so there's apparently a lot of support that's needed in that, but $6 billion, you can probably, if you had competent people who could look at the opportunity and then figure out how to monetize it, then you could have turned that around for a few $1 billion. You could have turned it into something that could have been extremely productive.
Sure. Yeah.
This is what I think you had the Jews that were moving into the region of Palestine were doing 120 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They were going 150 years ago. They started going in and trying to, because and I put up Amanda's post here, Palestine was Palestine till after World War II. was Palestine since the Romans named the region that 2,000 years ago. We talked about that at the beginning of the show. Matt,
But
if
it
you
wasn't a
missed that
country.
part,
No.
it wasn't a country.
Well,
it was never a country.
even
Never
more
produced-
so than not a country. It wasn't a culture.
Yeah, it wasn't even a
There
culture.
are no
Yeah.
Palestinian. There's not like a Persian
Right.
or a Roman or a Greek. There's no Palestinian culture,
Right.
and that's where that gets lost in examining the circumstances and the discourse, because they keep saying, and then going back to the point I was making earlier, this victimized and victim mentality that's been interjected into the discourse and wrapped around race and genetics and gender and all this other shit.
Yeah.
Sarah, when you are surrounded by every nation around you wants your annihilation, I can understand why Israel requires every person to have military training.
So,
For their own
and-
betterment, I think.
friends that are in Israel, I have trained
That's
with
the only way they can survive.
Yeah, and so I've said for the last decade or two, if I was ever going to be in a natural disaster, I would want to be with one of two cultures, either the Japanese, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Or the Israelis.
Yeah.
I would want to be with either one of those in a group of nothing but them.
Yeah.
If shit was going down hard and it was ugly and my only chance to survival was with the group I was in, I'd want to be with either the Japanese or the Israelis, because their culturally, the reason they're so attentive to detail and methodical and do pretty good strategy and planning and execution and all of that stuff is because that's the way that they're trained to think.
Right.
If you look at the curriculum, the content of the education and the focus of each one of those on training the next generation, it's completely opposite of what we've been talking about with this group of teenagers in this Gaza Strip.
Right.
It is the exact. It's not 180. It's 360 degrees spun around 3 or 4 times. That's the magnitude of difference of the way that the exposure to knowledge and information and the import that's given to that. There's in Asian cultures in general, Scotty,
Yes.
you, me, us old guys, we've
Yep.
been around. We're sliding up the slope, right? Okay. In the Asian cultures, you and I are achieving reveredness status.
Yes.
Okay. We're the guys that everybody else going, we better go talk to them.
Yeah.
And there's a reason that has endured and has been as productive and positive as it has been and still is. The derivation. Right, there was a D there somewhere. The delineation, distinction, and differentiation of that
Not to mention derivation.
and that too is one of the most important things that's missing at the fundamental level of the interaction and absorption of information that you put through your bullshit filter. Now, the bullshit filter. I'd like to take a poll.
Take a poll.
Bullshit filter. Importance of daily interaction with reality on a scale of 1 to 10. Go, Michael.
Oh, my daily interaction with all the bullshit.
The importance of the bullshit filter in that daily interaction.
Oh, I use it quite a bit because, like I said, I work with the public. Every time you turn on the TV, there's something coming at you. I'll soon be 52 years old. And a lot of things that used to key me up, I'd be like, I have learned, these people learn how to use specific words to target an emotional reaction. And if you kind of say, well, that guy's trying to gaslight me, by saying this, and it don't matter, you know. You know, when I hear things like everyone in Israel, you know, are military trained. I've been to Israel. I have a lot of Jewish friends that have invited me back to Israel. And not only do they have military training like that, they're also taught animal husbandry. They're taught how to farm. They've taught how to, how to put,
Right.
you know, their school trips takes them out and it says, hey, you will raise this baby lamb. You will care for wounded animals. You know, you will learn how basic veterinary things. And like Scotty said, when you are surrounded by people that are intent on your daily demise and would love nothing more than make a parking lot where your home is and where you lay your head and raise your children, goddamn right. Hell.
Well, you can't tell me that the Israelis and the Palestinians are the same in ideological intent and purposes and goals when you have Hamas, who was voted in, when you have Hamas, as I mentioned earlier in the show, in their charter is the annihilation of all Jews in Israel and worldwide.
Yeah.
When that is in their charter, Hamas has lost the high ground before they even gained it.
No.
You can't have that. If the United States said, we're for the annihilation of all black people, we've lost any kind of moral compass and any kind of high ground in anything. If we have chosen one people group to say we exist for the sole purpose of their annihilation.
What was that movie quote?
And around the world.
That there's a movie, I think it's in The Shooter or something, and the guy looks over at him and he says, your moral compass is so fucked up you could not find the parking lot from here with it. A lot of times when I see these group like that, I think their moral compass is so fucked up they couldn't find the parking lot.
It is.
And you know, and I hear, you know, when people say, oh, you know, they're trained or whatever, you know, if my neighbors hated me every day, I wouldn't have the big dog that sat on my lap. I'd get me a dog that, you know, that would bite, you know, which mine, you know, most times she's asleep on the love seat and wouldn't do much anyway. But if my neighbor was intent on coming over here, burning my house down, blowing up my vehicles, you know, taking shots at my kids, there would be a defensive posture put up on my part. You know, because, you know, she asked me something a long time ago about a military mindset. I think it was on Veterans Day or something. I wasn't feeling really well. You know, the military mindset for Israel is survival. And if you have to be
the way
militant,
they've been since their inception.
You know, but they have had to be militant. You know what I'm saying?
Good insight, Sarah.
You know, if they would not be of a military mindset, they would have been overran. And you know, what was the 6-Day War? They had 4 or 5 Arab nations that was intent on bombing them out of existence. They all got together, had their little clubhouse meeting, and said, "Look, we're going to hit them from all sides." You know, they can't withstand
Transjordan, Egypt, Iraq, Lebanon, Syria. 5.
And 5 of them. And they hit them from all sides. And every plane they sent up went down in a ball of shit. Every tank they sent over was a heaping pile of shit with dead bodies in it. Then after they got their ass whipped, they went crying and saying, "Look, you got to make Israel get back to, what was it, Golan Heights. Oh, you know, we didn't mean to start shit with them, but the land that they got for a buffer zone, we want back. Make them give it back to us." It's like a retarded toddler that got their ass whipped after they started the fight, and they said, "Oh, but I want you to give it back." You know, I've always heard, you know, the spoils of war goes to the winner, and you know, and Israel wanted to play nice, and they get part of it back.
They gave part of it back.
You know, if I was Israel, I'd have told them, say, "Hey guys, you started some shit. You got your ass whipped. Go eat a bag of
Israel has always stood for and has always wanted the joint rule, or not rule. Rule's not the word I'm looking for. To honor both sides of that argument and say there should be a homeland for the Jews, there should be a homeland for the Palestinians. But I would also say, if I were saying this, There should be a homeland for the Jews. There should be a homeland for the Palestinians. But if you start shit with my people, I will take you out.
You don't.
I mean, that's just the way it works.
Yeah.
It's like that with my family. I want to live peaceably with your family and my family
Yeah.
on this block. But if your family attacks my family indiscriminately, I will make sure you will never be able to do that again. So it's that kind of thinking. Now,
You know what
I
is
gotta
it?
start
Somebody
to
else will
wrap
raise
this
your
up
sons and
because we've
daughters.
gone way over. I want to, and I can get your reaction. I've done this before. I've read this before. I want you to react to it if you want to, or we can leave it at this. And that's Stan Rogers' song, "The House of Orange." And of course, he's talking about the narrator of the song here is he's living in Canada, of Irish descent. His family lives
Poor
there.
bastard.
And he's got somebody who's knocked on his door to try to get him to support the IRA back home in Ireland. And so he wrote this song. He says, "I took back my hand and I showed him the door. No dollar of mine would I part with this day for fueling the engines of a bloody, cruel war in my forefathers' home far away, who fled the first famine wearing all that they owned, were called navigators, all rugged and torn, and built the Grand Trunk here and found a new home wherever their children were born. Their sons have no politics none can recall, allegiance from long generations before. Oh, this or oh, that name can't matter at all, or be cause enough for to war. And meanwhile, my babies are safe in their home, unlike their pale cousins who shiver and cry, while kneecappers nail their poor dads to the floor and teach them to hate and to die. It's those cruel beggars who spurn the fair coin, the peace for their kids they could take at their will. Since the day old King Billy prevailed at the Boyne, they've bombed and they've maimed and they've killed. Now they cry out for money and wail at the door, but home rule or republic, 'tis all of it shame, and a curse for us here who want nothing of war. We're kindred in nothing but name. All rights and all wrongs have long since blown away. For causes are ashes where children lie slain. Yet the damned UDL and the cruel IRA will tomorrow go murdering again. But no penny of mine will I add to the fray. Remember the Boyne, they'll call out in vain. For I've given my heart to the place I was born, and forgiven the whole house of Orange, King Billy and the whole house of Orange. And so it's not a direct parallel, obviously, but I see similarities there. And it's mostly certain lines of that. Causes are ashes where children lie slain. The peace for their kids they could take at their will. It's that nobody wills that. I have seen Israel, for the most part, no matter what machinations go on by unscrupulous leaders behind the scenes. I have seen Israel, for the most part, take the stance that they are open to Arab nationhood as well as the right to exist for Israel. I've seen that. That's in the open. Maybe there's all these insidious people in the background that say, good, that's the picture we're putting out there for the world, but this is what we really want to do. We want to wipe their asses off the face of the earth. Maybe that exists. I have seen Hamas and the people, the 17-year-old gypsy, what'd you say? What was the percentage point of that? 75% or something of the kids, 80%?
It's 50% of the population is average 17 years old and younger.
And what are they teaching them?
That was my point. I was like,
kill
wait a minute, what's
and
going
to
on over
die,
there?
and to proliferate it to the next generation. Stop. You just want to go, just stop.
Well,
Everybody stop.
well, and
And
that's
make it work.
that's
And people can do that, but they're not.
well, that's one of the things that I questioned about. If you've got a confined space with a certain, you got a geographic and demographic construct, and it's like this, and you've got what are the resources that are available to it to exist and do what it does.
Mhm.
Well, I'm kind of thinking that the 6 billion over 2 million is probably a good ratio. And if you applied it with some thought, you could probably turn that into a productive environment.
Yes.
You
I
can
mean,
build
and
more
I'm,
world
and you know,
reports
I've
than
done
that.
business. I don't have an MBA in business school, but I've done a lot of business, built a lot of shit, done it all over the place. And there are fundamentals of the way that input and output ROI happens that are just fundamental, and you either start with them or you're going to run into problems. And it
Yeah.
appears that the ROI on Gaza, on this group of people that have identified as Palestinians, who apparently are not, there isn't any Palestinians, so we got questions on that. But apparently the execution of this environment has been less than productive and positive,
Yeah.
considering the environment, the characteristics, the circumstances, and the resources. There seems to be something that's not working. And nobody's asking that. They're just focusing on the things like that guy, String, what was it? Stream Patriot, whatever that you were putting up.
Smiling Bandit.
Smiling Bandit.
Yeah.
Though
Who's
that
welcome back
focus,
anytime, by the way.
yeah, those, yeah, the my only point was the questions were focused on the symptoms, not on the bigger picture and the cause,
Right.
which
I
is
agree.
what I'm talking about. So
And
I think that we're going to see. I don't think this is going to be it'll rise to the global consumption that is being prognosticated. I think it's going to have enough bumps and blips of significant extreme, but they're going to be short-lived. And
I don't
ironically
think this is gonna carry
enough,
on for a very long time. I think it's going to be, there's going to be a settlement found to this.
I think
I don't-
ironically, the those that are whining the most are the ones that are going to be exposed the most,
Yeah.
and they're the ones that are going to lose the most.
Yeah.
That's
Agreed.
my thought.
Professor,
And on
were
that
you able to hear the two things I thought might come out of this whole situation?
I don't think so.
Okay. One, if Hamas, having tied Iran to the whole situation financially, if they were to do to the hostages what they dared say they would do, that Israel would have a pretext to take out the Iranian nuclear capability because they would be tied to the invasion.
So I think
And-
the Iranian nuclear capability is going to be taken out by default by the decapitation of the Iranian rulers, the Ayatollahs. I think those guys are going to get taken out, and that's going to take out the nuclear thing. So I think that's going to be a shocking event. It's going to be like I was saying earlier. I think, remember when Trump took out those dudes and he
Yep.
hit that cruise missile and people are going, well, you can't do that. And he goes, well, I just did. And
Just did.
what do you think of the results? So I think we're going to see that kind of thing with Iran.
Yeah.
And if
What-
you
what-
don't think that is
What was that when he had
Israel,
the date with the Chinese guy?
The other thing is, while Europe,
an embedded secret super special ops force that's within poo distance of the Ayatollahs, I think that you got to be missing something. To me, that's metrics is sitting there going, well, they're just sitting there waiting for the right opportunity and the timing for all the optics and the narrative and all the bullshit that's going to come around it. There is a set of circumstances, and this goes back to my point about what has happened here. There's a set of circumstances that are optimal for more productive and positive outcome. I think this is one of them. I think what I was just talking about is another set of them. And what we're going to see is some really high profile, intense events that are kind of going to go poof. Oh, shit. Poof. Oh, well, did you see that? Oh, what do you think of that? Oh, and then it's just going to kind of dissipate.
Yep.
So I don't see this conflagration of catastrophic global events. I see a bunch of little shit that's going to make people go, what the fuck? But it's going to stabilize the more extreme expressions of bullshit. So,
and we got to leave it at that for tonight, guys. I'm way over
wait,
time.
Wait. I was just getting started. You cannot do this to me again.
Why don't you go to bed? We'll stay up.
Yeah.
But wait, there's more, right?
So I have to show that I have some control here. See, there's actually a subtext that I'm not letting you in on. That I'm really the one in charge, and so even though it doesn't look like it, so
doesn't sound like it half the time.
We will do this again, hopefully Wednesday evening. I don't know what we're going to talk about yet. Let's see. We'll either get back into doing some other topics on Wednesday, or we'll continue this on depending on what's going on.
We'll get back to you, Scotty.
Yeah, control. Good luck. Yeah, that's about it. Thanks, sir. Thanks for that vote of confidence. Of course, I could just turn them all off. I can flip a switch and
Could happen.
Gone. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for the great conversation tonight.
Yes, sir.
Good to see you, Michael. Good to see you, brother. I'll talk to you again soon. Uncle John, good to see you. Thanks for being here, brother.
Anytime.
And of course, Professor Bauer, love you, my brother. And I'm glad you're here. And we will talk again soon. And he was talking. God, look at the control I have. I'm sorry. What was that? Oh, he's gone. He's gone. I was going to bring him back. See, I can even bring him back if I want to. So go to bed. We'll be here when you wake up, says Elvis. That's right. Yeah, I just got to get up. I got to get up and take my kids to school and stuff like that. I have to be somewhat coherent early in the morning. And I got a client that wants to stop by here tomorrow, and we're going to go through stuff. So I want to make sure I'm of sound mind when they get here. So everybody, thank you for being here. Thanks for being part of this show. I appreciate it. I appreciate your presence here. And guess what? We'll do it again in a couple of days. Live long and prosper.